Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
Have you ever wondered why some people stay calm in chaos while others collapse under pressure? What if true power isn't in your volume, but in your silence? And what if the person who controls their inner world ends up commanding every room they walk into? Most people lose their calm, not because the world is too loud, but because they've never trained their mind to stay steady when everything else starts shaking. They believe peace comes from silence or a lack of tension. But the truth is, real calm is revealed in conflict. It's not about dodging difficult people or running from friction. It's about mastering yourself so deeply that no matter who you face, they can't disturb your inner stillness. This calm isn't weakness. It's your edge. It becomes your quiet strength, sharpening your decision-making, protecting your emotional energy, and naturally commanding respect. Once you build that calm from the inside out, no one can take it from you. Not their chaos, not their criticism, not even their crisis. And in just a few moments, you'll learn exactly how to stay centered, grounded, and unshakable, no matter who or what tries to throw you off balance. Because here's the truth, your calm is your command. Society often praises the loudest voice in the room, but real influence flows from composure. Think about it. When tempers flare around a table or tension climbs in a meeting, the one who doesn't flinch becomes the anchor everyone turns to. That man who stays composed when others spiral, he doesn't just survive the moment, he leads it. And this isn't some rare gift reserved for the few. Your nervous system can be trained. Just as muscles grow through pressure, your inner calm can be developed through resistance. But it only happens when you stop letting the moods of others control your own. Their panic doesn't have to become your panic. Their urgency doesn't have to shake your foundation. It's a choice. And that choice starts now. To truly stay calm, you must stop tying your identity to outside noise. A disagreement isn't your downfall. A rude comment doesn't define your value. When your sense of self is rooted in purpose instead of emotion, you no longer react, you respond. Calmness becomes a decision you choose every day, not a mood that drifts with the wind. Now, imagine it again. You're in the middle of a heated meeting. The room is tense. Voices are climbing, and accusations are bouncing off the walls. Everyone's eyes scan for someone to take charge, to bring order to the chaos. But you don't shout back. You don't let the tension infect your tone. You speak slowly with intention. Your words are measured, clear. You listen deeply before saying a thing. And just like that, the storm begins to lose power. Your stillness becomes the calm in the middle of everyone else's crisis. Think back. Have you ever let frustration take over, only to regret it minutes later? What if in that exact moment you had paused? What if you had chosen quiet over sarcasm, composure over reaction? Would the entire outcome have shifted? The truth is, most people enter conflict with their fists up, ready to defend, ready to be right. But you choose something different. You don't just walk into the room to win, you walk in to lead. And you don't lead with force. You lead with calm. That steadiness becomes your strength. It draws people to you. It earns trust. It marks the beginning of true influence. And that's where your calm legacy is born. Not from silence, but from control. But make no mistake, calm is not something you inherit. It's something you build. No one is born patient. You were born like everyone else, crying, reacting, needing. But you don't have to stay there. You can train your nervous system just like you train a muscle. You can recondition your reactions. You can learn to slow down, to pause before speaking, to observe without jumping to judgment. And that training, it starts right now. The problem is, most people don't want to train their calm. They want to blame their temper. They shrug and say, "That's just who I am. I've always had a short fuse." But even the shortest fuse can be lengthened with discipline, with awareness, with choice. Start with observation. Notice your patterns. Who tend to push your buttons? What kind of words trigger you? Is it the tone? Is it a sense of being disrespected? Pay attention. Don't just react. Analyze. Then plan. Practice your response before you're in the fire. Because when the moment comes, it's too late to prepare. But if you've rehearsed, you won't be caught off guard. You'll lead the moment, calm, composed, unshaken. So how do you prepare for moments that test you? Not with clever words, but with posture, with breath, with intention. Picture this. You walk into a room and someone throws a sharp insult your way. Direct, public, calculated. All eyes turn to you, waiting for your retaliation. But instead of snapping back, you hold your center. You smile just slightly. You say nothing. Your silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. Your stillness speaks louder than anything you could have said. Suddenly, the one who insulted you shrinks. Their power slips away, not because you fought back, but because you didn't need to. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who couldn't be rattled, who remained calm even when the room was on fire. That kind of calm isn't luck. It's training, and it's available to you. Ask yourself, do you only want to grow when life is smooth, or do you want to grow when it matters most? Calm is not about being passive or letting things slide. It's about owning your emotions so they don't own you. That kind of control isn't automatic. It's earned. One pause, one breath, one choice at a time. Let others raise their voices. You, stay grounded. You don't need to prove your strength to anyone. That's the trap most people fall into, thinking they have to be loud to be respected. Thinking presence means domination. Thinking value comes from how much space they take up. But true power doesn't show off. It doesn't parade itself for attention. It's rooted. It's calm. It's undeniable. You've seen the opposite. The ones who interrupt to control the room, who puff up their voice to look confident, who talk over others out of fear that silence might reveal insecurity. They want to appear strong, but in reality, they're reacting, not leading. True authority doesn't shout. It doesn't panic. It commands, not by volume, but by certainty. When you know who you are, you don't need to convince anyone else. A grounded man doesn't walk into a room hoping to impress. He watches. He listens. He learns before he speaks. And when he finally speaks, his words land with force. Not because they're loud, but because they're laced with truth. People lean in, not because he demands their attention, but because he's earned it. That kind of presence doesn't just fill a space, it shifts the energy of it. And in moments of tension, when tempers flare and voices clash, it's rarely the loudest man who wins. It's the calmest one who commands the room. The man who reacts too quickly reveals his weakness. He shows too much. His emotions spill out, clouding his judgment and breaking the strength of his posture. But the grounded man, he operates differently. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't rush. He pauses. He breathes deeply. He remains still as the fire burns itself out. And when the moment is right, he steps forward, not to strike emotionally, but to speak with calm precision. He doesn't attack. He responds. He doesn't shout. He cuts through noise with clarity. Imagine this. You're accused unfairly in front of a crowd. The air is tense. Every pair of eyes watches you, anticipating a reaction. Anger, defensiveness, a meltdown. But instead, you hold your silence. You don't scramble to defend yourself with rushed, panicked words. You lift your eyes, meet their gaze, and speak a single line of undeniable truth. And in that moment, the entire atmosphere changes. Not because you yelled, but because you didn't. The silence you held became your sword. It wasn't weakness. It was strategy. That's the real power of stillness. It doesn't scream. It cuts clean through the chaos. So often, we waste our energy on people who never had ears to hear us in the first place. We get pulled into arguments with those whose minds are already made up. We chase validation in noisy rooms, hoping to be understood, while wisdom quietly whispers, you don't need to fight every battle to win the war. So don't engage with what doesn't serve your purpose. Don't pour your energy into noise. Stay rooted in who you are. Stay calm. Stay steady. Grounding yourself means releasing the urge to react. It means moving through the world on your own terms, not rushing to keep up, not shouting to be seen. You move deliberately. You speak with intention. You listen more than you talk. And when it's time to act, you do so with clarity and purpose. Not because you were provoked, but because the moment required it. That isn't passivity. That's real control. Others will burn themselves out trying to be seen, trying to be heard, jumping at every provocation. They'll chase every distraction. They'll run from every storm. But not you. You are planted like a tree. Your roots deep in truth. Your presence steady like strong branches. The wind may howl. The storm may rage. but you don't move. And when the dust finally settles, when the shouting fades and emotions calm, you're still standing. Not because you shouted louder, not because you fought harder, but because you stayed rooted. You stayed centered. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Real power isn't always loud or flashy. It's quiet confidence. It's the deep knowing that doesn't need to prove itself. A man who truly knows who he is doesn't flinch under pressure. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't need the noise to feel important. His stillness becomes the loudest thing in the room. And in a world that constantly craves attention and validation, that kind of calm becomes magnetic. Restraint becomes a radical act. Yes, you could lash out. You could fire back with a cutting remark. You could humiliate them, crush their argument, turn the crowd in your favor with one powerful sentence. You could win the moment, but you don't. Not because you're weak, but because you've evolved beyond that need. You choose restraint, and in that choice lies the highest form of mastery. It's not about being incapable. It's about being in control. That is true strength. Most men confuse power with reaction. They think dominance comes from speed. Strike first, talk loud, take every challenge personally. But here's the truth. Power without discipline becomes chaos. A man who lashes out at every insult, who responds to every offense, who throws every punch, he's not powerful. He's reactive. He's ruled by emotion, not by purpose. The true warrior, the real leader, is the man who knows exactly what he's capable of, but doesn't need to display it unless the mission demands it. He doesn't act from insecurity. He moves from vision with intention. Because the higher your goals, the more you must protect your peace. The more elevated your calling, the more you must guard your energy. Every battle has a cost. Every confrontation takes something from you. The wise man counts that cost before raising his voice or lifting his sword. He doesn't burn energy proving his worth to people who don't understand it. He doesn't fight just to be right. He rises not to react but to lead. The foolish man throws everything into every conflict. He unleashes his full energy on every disagreement, convinced that every battle must be won now, regardless of what it may cost him later. He wastes no time in restraint, only in reaction. But the wise man, he's different. He holds his ground without giving all of himself away. He knows not every confrontation deserves his full force. He can feel the difference between a cheap provocation and a true calling. And because of that, he conserves his strength for moments that matter most. Imagine this. You're deep in a debate, presenting a strong, clear argument. Then out of nowhere, someone hits you with a cheap jab. Personal, petty, clearly designed to rattle you. You instantly think of the perfect comeback. One line, and you'd silence them completely. But instead, you smile. You pause. You take a breath. And you let that breath do the talking. Because you're not there to tear people down. You're there to build something greater. And everyone watching, they won't remember the insult. They'll remember the way you handled it, with grace. That's the kind of composure that lingers. That's the kind of strength that earns respect. Have you ever won an argument only to lose a relationship? Ever said something in anger that echoed in your mind, long after the moment had passed? That's what misused power does. It doesn't just wound your opponent, it wounds you too. But when you pause, when you choose awareness over impulse, when you stop to check in with yourself before checking someone else, you make room for leadership to show up. Not reaction, not ego. Leadership, that pause, that breath, that inner scan, that is your greatest weapon. Ask yourself in those moments, does this serve me? Not just my pride, not just my image, but my mission, my future. If the answer is no, then the response is clear. Release it. Let it pass. Hold your posture, not your tone. Because silence, when chosen wisely, can speak louder than 1,000 clever replies. Restraint isn't shrinking. It isn't weakness. It isn't avoidance. It's precision. It's a deliberate choice to show power through patience. It's the highest form of discipline. It declares, I could dominate this moment, but I choose not to because I don't need to. It gives you mastery, not just over your words, but over your emotions, your attention, your influence. And that kind of control, that's what makes a man truly unshakable. Just take a look around. In today's world, outrage earns views. Anger gets attention. Drama pulls people in. But attention is fleeting, it flickers and dies. Legacy, on the other hand, endures. And legacy is built by those who resist the urge to react. The ones who hold their strength instead of spending it on petty victories. The ones who refuse to lower themselves for applause that doesn't last. Because when you learn to master restraint, you unlock a rare kind of freedom. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to every critic. You stop reacting to every provocation. You no longer chase the need to prove your worth because you've already owned it internally. And that inner certainty, it liberates you from noise. It frees you to become the man who speaks only when something needs to be said. You move with purpose, not impulse. You let others wear themselves out, trying to win ego battles, while you quietly lay the foundation for something far greater. And when you finally choose to speak, your words carry weight. When you take action, it resonates. When you lead, people follow, not because they fear you, but because they respect the clarity and calm you command. So the next time someone pushes your buttons or tries to pull you into their chaos, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this worthy of my energy? And if it isn't, don't give it another moment. Walk forward, not to escape, but to rise above. Because sometimes the strongest move you can make is no move at all. Not to strike back, but to stand still. To hold your fire. To walk away undefeated. That's not weakness. That's restraint. And restraint, that is power in its highest form. Speak not like someone swinging a sword, but like someone holding a scalpel. Words are not decorations for your pride. They aren't noise to fill awkward silence. Words are tools, sharp, weighty, impactful. They can build or destroy. They can cut or heal. And the way you wield them, whether with recklessness or with precision, reveals the depth of your self-control and maturity. Most men throw their words around like weapons. Reckless, emotional, loud. They speak to impress, to overpower, to win the moment, even if it costs them long-term respect. But your words must be different. You must speak like a surgeon, precise, intentional, and deliberate. Because one sentence, spoken with clarity and care, can shift the direction of a conversation. It can restore a broken relationship or, in some cases, alter the course of a life. On the flip side, one careless phrase can cut so deep that no apology will ever fully erase the scar it leaves behind. When you begin to understand that every word carries weight, your language starts to change. You stop throwing words around for effect. You don't speak to feed your pride. You don't reach for drama or domination. Instead, you speak when it serves something greater. Your mission, your values, your purpose. You speak not to prove that you're right, but to be effective. In high-pressure situations, most people do the opposite. They raise their voices as if shouting could somehow substitute for leadership. They sharpen their tone, hoping it sounds like strength. But volume isn't power. Emotion isn't direction. And noise? It only creates more noise. You must choose the harder path, the path of discipline. Lower your voice. Slow your pace. Let each word land with purpose. Leave room between your sentences for others to breathe, to reflect, to hear. Let your calm become the most commanding presence in the room. Picture this. A team has just suffered a major failure. Panic fills the air. Accusations are thrown like sparks. Fear spreads, igniting the atmosphere like wildfire. Everyone's voice is rising, but yours remains still. You raise one hand, not with force, but with calm authority. And then you speak. Your voice is low, steady, composed. You don't add fuel to the fire. You bring clarity. You outline the facts, offer a solution, remind them of the mission. And slowly, you feel the temperature drop. The chaos begins to settle. Not because you overpowered them with volume, but because you anchored them with presence. That's not just speaking. That's leadership in its purest form. Have you ever walked away from conversation knowing you were right, but wishing you had spoken with more restraint or more wisdom? Maybe you delivered the perfect comeback, sharp and on point, yet somehow it left you feeling empty. Why is that? Because speech is not merely about winning the moment. It's about moving things forward. It's not just what you say, it's what your words leave behind. When you speak from ego, you might dominate the moment, but you often lose something more valuable: respect, trust, and long-term momentum. A man of true strength doesn't sharpen his tongue for applause. He refines it for impact. He removes the excess, trims the emotion, and transforms his thoughts into clear, steady truth. He doesn't rush to speak. He writes before he speaks. He thinks before he writes. And before he even forms a thought, he listens deeply. That's the discipline. That's where real precision begins. It doesn't come from instinct. It comes from intentional stillness. This is a practice you can begin right now. Before you open your mouth, ask yourself, what do I want my words to create? Will they heal or harm? Will they lead or distract? Will they build or burn? And if your answer isn't clear, don't speak yet. Wait, think again, clarify, then speak with purpose, not pressure. Remember, words said with weight carry more meaning than a flood of noise said in haste. In meetings, don't chase airtime. In conflict, don't chase dominance. Let your words be the anchor that grounds the moment, not the spark that ignites it. Speak in a way that draws people not away from you, but toward a better direction. Let your tone calm the room rather than escalate tension. Let your language elevate the space rather than weigh it down. You're not here to entertain egos or prove superiority. You're here to guide, to model strength and stillness. And in moments of uncertainty or chaos, the one who speaks with composed clarity becomes the true commander, not because of title or volume, but because of presence. The man who speaks last, who speaks least, and only when it truly matters. That's the man others follow without hesitation. So don't strive to be the man who demands to be heard. Be the man whose silence speaks louder than noise. The one whose presence alone commands attention. Not because he fills the air with words, but because every word he chooses carries weight. Don't be the one who floods the room with sound. Be the one whose single deliberate sentence changes the direction of the entire conversation, like a quiet hand on the helm that turns the whole ship. Words are not ornaments or weapons to be tossed around recklessly. They are instruments, tools of precision. Use them the way a master craftsman would, shaped by clarity, guided by discipline, and spoken with a deep sense of purpose. When you do, you'll discover something remarkable. People remember not only what you said, but the emotional imprint you left when you said it. Patience, you see, isn't about sitting idle. It's not passive, and it's certainly not weakness. True patience is endurance with intention. It's having the strength to remain steady when the world around you is rushing, shouting, or demanding instant reaction. It's the quiet force within your chest that holds firm while the storm outside tries to pull you under. Real patience isn't for those who lack drive. It's for the disciplined, the ones who understand that stillness can be a form of action. It's the power to wait, not because you're afraid to move, but because you're wise enough to know when movement actually matters. Yes, people may misread your stillness. They might think you're doing nothing. But what they don't see is the preparation happening beneath the surface. You're not stalling. You're preparing. You're refining. You're becoming resilient in silence. While others panic and sabotage their progress by rushing results, you take a step back, not in retreat, but in strategy. You observe, you study, you strengthen in the shadows. You wait, not from hesitation, but from mastery, because you've learned something the world rarely teaches. Timing isn't everything, it's the only thing. You don't chase every opportunity that knocks. You prepare for the one that truly matters. The world may celebrate speed, praising the one who moves fastest, speaks first, or reacts loudest. But you've chosen something better. But behind every great achievement lies a man who mastered the art of restraint. A man who didn't lunge at the first sign of opportunity, who didn't allow pride or fear to dictate his pace. The world may often admire the bold, the impulsive, those who leap without looking. But it is the deliberate, the ones who move with purpose, whom the world chooses to follow. Because they don't just see the moment, they see beyond it. Picture yourself standing in line for something you've earned, something you've spent years building toward. You've sacrificed, you've prepared, and now you're close. But others begin to cut ahead. They push forward with arrogance. Your pride ignites. Your ego begs for action. You want to protest, to claim your spot, to demand recognition. But you don't. You don't lower yourself to chaos. You don't scramble for scraps. Instead, you stand tall. You breathe deeply. You stay calm. Because you trust that your preparation wasn't in vain. And when your moment finally comes, you step forward. Not just ready, but unshakably equipped. Not because you rushed, but because you had the strength to wait. That's the difference between the reactive and the refined. Think back to those moments in your life when impatience cost you something real. A rushed project that collapsed under pressure. A relationship that cracked because you forced its growth. A hasty decision made in emotion. One that still echoes with regret. Were those failures because of your ability, or were they born from a lack of patience? Now imagine if you had waited, sat with the discomfort, resisted the urge to act just to feel in control. Trusted that time wasn't the enemy. It was the sculptor. How much more would those moments have given you? How differently would they have ended? This is the real test of patience. To endure the gap between desire and fulfillment without bitterness, without noise, without collapse. To hold that space with strength, to let it refine you. Patience doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something deeper is being built inside you. Because even in stillness, you're growing. In the silence, you're sharpening. The delay isn't dead time. It's development. And it is within that delay that your character is being forged. It teaches you to lead yourself long before you ever lead anyone else. Patience molds your emotional discipline. It strengthens your mindset, sharpens your perspective, and matures your vision. It draws a bold line between what your impulses crave in the moment and what your purpose is truly calling you toward. It's not about suppressing desire. It's about elevating your awareness. The man who understands this begins practicing patience daily in small, intentional ways. Start by delaying minor gratifications. Let the conversation move on without the urge to interrupt. Listen longer than you find comfortable. Resist that itch to prove your point or dominate the room. Let someone else shine while you observe. Watch what happens, not outside but within. Your strength begins to take root in silence, not in spotlight. That quiet control, that ability to withhold, becomes a form of mastery forged through everyday moments. Whether it's sitting in traffic without swearing under your breath, pausing your tongue mid-argument, or taking one deep breath before replying, each act of restraint is a small victory. Even goals are better when they're left to simmer, slowly developing their full flavor, rather than being rushed and undercooked. Over time, this self-discipline becomes tangible. It's something others can sense. It's why people start to trust you. Not because you react quickly, but because your timing is precise. They come to rely on your composure. You become the steady hand in a storm, the one they turn to when everyone else is losing control. Not because you always have the answer, but because you know when to wait and when to act. That's what patience really is. It's not doing less, it's doing the right thing at the right time. It's the strength to stay rooted in a vision too powerful to be shaken by the ticking clock. And that's what separates you from the noise. While the world rushes around in chaos, you remain centered. You don't chase outcomes, you prepare for them. You don't flinch at pressure, you focus under it. So when your moment finally comes, you don't stumble into it. You rise to meet it. You're not caught off guard. You're calm, ready, grounded. Every outburst chips away at more than you realize. Every time you lose your temper, something else is lost with it. Respect, clarity, maybe even opportunity. That's a truth many refuse to confront. Anger can feel like power in the moment, like control, like you're standing up for yourself, like you're being heard. But is it really strength, or is it something else entirely? But behind that burst of heat lies a heavy toll. When a fire finally burns out, what are you left with? Often, it's not satisfaction or resolution. It's the ashes. Ashes of trust, of lost influence, of halted progress. Anger always comes with a price tag, and more often than not, that price is far higher than the offense that sparked it. You may feel justified in the moment. You might even believe you had no choice, that someone had to say it, that your reaction was necessary, that they needed to hear the truth. But once the dust settles, what stays with you isn't the moment of shouting. It's the wreckage left behind. Words spoken in a surge of rage don't simply disappear into thin air. They linger. They leave scars. They create walls. And sometimes those walls take years, maybe longer, to tear down. Your energy is your most valuable currency. Every decision you make, every challenge you face, every step you take toward your vision requires focused attention. But when you spend that energy on outrage, on proving emotion instead of pursuing purpose, you're not just wasting it. You're robbing yourself. You're draining the fuel meant for your mission. You trade long-term power for short-term satisfaction, and it's never a fair trade. Picture this. You're leading a business. A team member underperforms or makes a costly mistake. Your instinct kicks in, slam the table, raise your voice, assert dominance. And in that instant, yes, you might feel in control. You might feel like you've restored order. But pause for a second. What truly happened? The room goes silent, but not because you earned respect. It's silence born of fear. That employee who once had creative ideas now retreats into survival mode. Their goal isn't to grow, it's to avoid you. Trust disappears. Communication becomes guarded. Innovation slowly withers. And for what? A few seconds of release. A fleeting illusion of power. Now, imagine handling it another way. So instead of reacting, you pause. You take a breath. You call the person aside, away from the crowd, away from the noise. You speak in a low, steady tone, not weak, but firm. You ask, not accuse. You listen first, then guide. You hold them accountable, but with dignity. And in that moment, something shifts. The individual grows. The room exhales. And more importantly, you lead, not from emotion, but from intention. You don't lead from impulse. You lead from wisdom. Because anger itself isn't the enemy. Uncontrolled anger is. There are times when anger is justified. When injustice needs to be confronted. When firm boundaries must be drawn. But even righteous anger must be refined. The most powerful anger doesn't explode, it's channeled. It doesn't dominate the room. It directs the moment with precision. Measured, not manic. Controlled, not chaotic. Have you ever won an argument, but felt something hollow afterward? Delivered the perfect final word, only to walk away with a fractured relationship, broken trust, or a team too afraid to collaborate. That's the hidden cost of rage. It offers you a temporary win, but robs you of everything built to last. So what can you do? Build a habit. Notice the temperature rising within you. Feel that pulse quicken, that impulse to strike, to prove, to dominate. That sensation, that's your signal. It's not a warning to erupt. It's a cue to choose. Delay the reaction. Don't bury it, but don't unleash it either. Redirect it. Write it down. Walk it off. Breathe it through. Let the heat settle before you speak. Don't throw flames into the room and call it leadership. Don't hand over your power to a fleeting emotion. Each time you remain composed, you forge a stronger version of yourself. You don't just control the moment, you train your mind. You don't just manage a situation, you master it. And that's how true leadership begins, not by commanding others, but by first commanding yourself. Self-mastery always begins with emotional discipline. A man who cannot command his own words will always be at the mercy of his surroundings. When pressure rises, when tension fills the air, it's not just your critics who are watching. Your friends, your family, your team, they're watching too. They observe how you carry yourself in the heat. When you remain centered while others unravel, you gain their confidence. You earn their respect, because calm under fire is rare and it draws people in. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It doesn't mean you avoid confrontation or back away when it's time to speak. It means you don't waste energy on theatrics. You don't attack out of emotion. You confront with clarity. You don't lash out. You respond with direction. That subtle difference? That's the foundation of real leadership. Think about the men you truly admire. Are they the ones who shout the loudest? Who win arguments with cutting remarks? Or are they the ones who walk into a room and immediately shift the atmosphere without saying a word? The ones whose presence commands attention, not their volume. The ones whose discipline speaks louder than any performance. That's the man you're working to become. And the first step is mastering your anger. So the next time you feel that fire building inside, pause. Ask yourself, is this moment worth the cost? What am I really trading away if I choose to react? If the answer isn't undeniably clear, it's probably no. Let the heat pass. Reclaim your vision. Protect your strength. Because the strongest man in the room isn't the one who dominates. It's the one who chooses peace when chaos is an option. Choosing calm doesn't mean weakness. It means wisdom. Inner stillness is your greatest weapon. You may not control others, their opinions, their actions, their words, but you can always control how you respond. You may not control how others misjudge you or how they distort your intentions, But there's something far more important that you can control. How deeply those things reach into your mind, your emotions, your identity. That invisible space between the noise of the world and your response to it. That's where your true power lies. That space is your stronghold, and the ability to hold it steady is called inner stillness. Inner stillness is often misunderstood. It's not passivity. It's not weakness. It's not bottling up your feelings or pretending you're unaffected. No, inner stillness is a shield. It's your unshakable fortress, a place within you that no insult can penetrate, no storm can flood. While the world spins in chaos, while voices rise and tempers flare, you remain rooted. Not because life has grown softer, but because you have grown stronger. Most men spend their lives trying to change the outside world. They beg for fairness. They chase comfort. They wish people would just be kinder, speak gentler, respect more. And when that doesn't happen, and it rarely does, they feel defeated, like the world is against them. But the man who masters himself takes a different path. He stops demanding silence from others. He starts building it within. He no longer waits for peace. He carries it wherever he goes. This kind of stillness is not built on stage, but in secret. It's crafted in the quiet hours before the sun rises, in the long, measured breaths taken before you make your first move of the day. In moments of solitude, when no one is watching, you ask yourself the deeper question, who am I becoming? And the answer doesn't shout. It doesn't come rushing. It emerges slowly, gently, with a clarity that only stillness can bring. It reminds you, you are not your reaction. You are your response. You are not the noise around you. You are the calm you create within. Picture it, a sailor caught in the middle of a brutal storm. Waves crashing, winds howling, lightning streaking across the sky. The ship may rock and groan under pressure. But beneath the surface, far below the chaos, the ocean is still, deep, undisturbed. That's you. You may live on the surface with the rest of the world, but your power comes from the calm you've anchored deep within. You see the chaos. You feel the wind whip past your skin. But deep inside, beneath the surface, you are calm like the ocean floor, anchored, rooted, completely unshakable. That's the strength of inner stillness. Now ask yourself honestly, when was the last time someone's words followed you all the way home? When their voice had already gone quiet, but their comments kept replaying in your mind? Was it truly what they said that hurt you? Or was it that you allowed their words to take root, to echo in your mind long after they left the room? Did you hand over the keys to your peace without even realizing it? Inner stillness is when you decide to take those keys back. It's when you finally say, no one gets to occupy my mind without permission. It means saying, your voice may be loud, but it doesn't have the authority to shape my thoughts. Your tone may be sharp, but it does not carve into my self-worth. You may rage all you want, but I will not be dragged into your storm. This level of stillness isn't something that arrives in one grand moment. It doesn't crash in like a wave. It's earned, built, and strengthened, moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. It begins with watching instead of reacting. It begins with breathing instead of blaming. When a noise rises around you, stillness doesn't mean shutting down. It means you remain open, but only to what preserves your clarity. You let others raise their voices while you keep your focus. You let others panic while you calmly prepare. That isn't avoidance. That is mastery. In tense meetings, when voices rise and eyes narrow, you stay centered. When feedback turns harsh, you stay composed. When provoked unfairly, you do not retaliate. You remain still, not as a show, but as a conscious discipline. Because the man who cannot sit with discomfort in silence will forever be at the mercy of the noise around him. Stillness becomes your greatest weapon when it becomes instinct, not something you have to remind yourself to do, but something that flows from you naturally. It becomes who you are, not just something you try to practice. When that stillness follows you into every room, into every conversation, into every challenge, you start moving through the fire without getting burned. Not because the flames have vanished, but because you've learned to carry water within. You become your own refuge. And here's the deeper truth. Inner stillness is magnetic. People can sense it, even if they can't explain it. They trust it. They're drawn to it, like finding shelter in a storm. The man who doesn't flinch, who listens with his full attention, who speaks with purpose and calm. He commands attention without ever needing to raise his voice. He doesn't dominate a room with volume. He anchors it with presence. He becomes the steady force in times of uncertainty, not because he controls others, but because he has master control over himself. But let's be honest, it's not easy. There will be days when your patience wears thin, when the temptation to snap back, to defend your pride, to match someone else's chaos will feel overwhelming. And in those moments, you must remember, you lose nothing by staying composed, but you risk everything when you lose control of yourself. Your power doesn't come from reacting. It comes from remembering who you are. So don't wait for the next crisis to practice stillness. Begin now in the quiet moments. Stay present in the ordinary. Hear the noise, but don't let it settle in your lungs. Witness the chaos, but don't wear it like a second skin. Guard your inner world more carefully than your outer appearance. Build that space with intention, brick by quiet brick, knowing the storms will come, but so will your strength. Because that's the nature of the world, it rages. But the man who has mastered stillness doesn't fear the storm. He walks through it, grounded, focused, complete, and nothing can shake him. You become the mirror, not the flame. When conflict comes, people expect you to react. They throw fire at you hoping you'll ignite. They want you to snap, to match their energy, to dive headfirst into their chaos. Why? Because your reaction justifies their own. It fuels their narrative. It drags you into a battleground where emotion silences reason and noise buries truth. But you don't fall for it. You don't rise to the bait. You reflect instead of ignite. You stay calm while they spiral. You observe while they unravel. You respond, not to defend your pride, but to protect your focus. Because your energy is far too precious to be wasted on someone else's emotional chaos. You've seen it before. A man storms into a room, already seething. His words are sharp, his tone loaded with provocation. He's not there for a conversation. He's looking for a target, a trigger, a place to unload his fire. But here's the truth. If no one engages, if no one meets him at that same explosive level, his fire has nothing to burn. He burns out alone. That's the quiet power most miss. Fire cannot survive without fuel. And when you refuse to feed it with your reaction, you win a battle that never had to be fought. You don't rise to the noise. You reflect it calmly, clearly, like a mirror that doesn't distort. And that mirror is more powerful than any angry comeback because it doesn't just deflect, it reveals. It forces people to confront themselves, to see their rage, their insecurity, their lack of control reflected back at them with brutal clarity. And in that reflection, most people only have two choices: either lower their voice or walk away. Don't confuse that kind of silence with weakness. It's not the silence of fear, it's the silence of mastery. You're not stepping back to avoid confrontation. You're stepping up to own it. You're choosing when and where the battle is worth it. You're not surrendering. You're just refusing to fight on terms that destroy rather than build. Because you've learned something deeper. Power without direction leads only to destruction. And you're here to build, not burn. You fight with clarity, not chaos. With vision, not vengeance. With control, not confusion. Your calm isn't apathy, it's discipline. The man who can stand in the middle of the fire and not become part of it. That's the man others trust, the one they follow, the one they respect. Now picture this. You're in a public space. Tension rises. Someone loses control. They shout, they accuse, they try to embarrass you. Eyes shift toward you, waiting to see what you'll do. And instead of raising your voice, instead of reacting, you listen. You take a breath. You speak slowly, directly, truthfully. You correct them, not with venom, but with precision. Not to prove a point, but to bring clarity. And just like that, the moment shifts. The crowd won't remember the insults thrown your way. What they'll remember is how you stood, calm, composed, unmoved. How you didn't flinch. How you didn't fall into the trap of reaction. That's the quiet, lasting power of becoming the mirror. Because in a world obsessed with volume, where noise often equals attention, true stillness becomes unforgettable. It becomes legendary. So ask yourself, do you want to be feared for a moment or respected for a lifetime? Do you want to burn hot and fast, leaving only ashes or stand strong and endure through every storm. Anger might intimidate, but it never inspires. Rage might shake a room, but it never builds one. And if your goal is to lead, to influence, to leave a legacy that outlives the noise, then fire won't get you there. But light will. Calm will. Discipline will. The mirror doesn't shout. It doesn't strike. It doesn't plead. And yet, it holds immense power. It simply reflects the truth. And when people come face to face with their own reflection, some will rise, others will retreat. But that's not your concern. You're not here to control their reaction. You're here to master your presence. Train yourself to respond with questions, not accusations. Because questions invite thought. Accusations ignite defense. The next time someone lashes out, don't bark back. Instead, ask with quiet authority, what exactly do you want me to understand? That simple question shifts the energy instantly. When tension escalates, don't match it. Breathe deeper. Move slower. Let your body speak before your voice ever does. Stand with intention, shoulders back, eyes steady, hands still. No fidetin, no retreat. Just unwavering stillness that commands the moment. And when you do speak, speak with economy. Say only what matters. Don't pour emotion into the room. Deliver insight. Make every word count. Because when your words are rare, calm, and clear, they don't just fill space. They land with weight. People listen, not because you demand it, but because you've earned it. Let others chase applause, play in the fire of ego and pride, scrambling to be heard. Let them throw sparks. But you're here to be the light. Light that doesn't flare and fade, but light that reveals, warms, and guides. Because your mission isn't to win every battle. It's to illuminate the path that truly matters. You're not just here to walk into rooms. You're here to command them. But to do that, you must first master yourself. Because no matter where you go, there will always be people who try to shake you. They'll toss chaos like darts, aiming to provoke, to pull you into their fire. But if you want to rise as a true leader, you must understand something deeper. You don't need to match fire with fire to remain powerful. You just need to remain grounded, calm, aware, unshaken. And over time, one of two things will happen. Either the noise around you fades, or you simply outlast it. Be the mirror. Be the stillness that doesn't budge. Be the one who leads not through force, but through clarity. Because calm isn't weakness. It's the unmistakable signature of a life built with discipline. That kind of calm doesn't appear by luck. It's not some personality trait you were born with or a gift only the few possess. No, it's earned. Quietly, consistently, in the unseen hours. It's the silent return on 1,000 small, intentional decisions. It's the outcome of choosing order over chaos, clarity over impulse, and structure over emotion. You don't rise calm by accident. You rise calm because you've already faced the inner battles. Your mind isn't a battlefield. Your emotions aren't scattered across unfinished plans or distractions. You wake up with clarity, not confusion. You meet the day with direction, not disorder. And when the world throws its chaos your way, you're already ahead of it. The man without discipline is at the mercy of everything. He eats not for fuel, but for comfort. He scrolls through noise instead of sitting with his thoughts. He stays up too late and stumbles into the morning without purpose. Then he wonders why his mind feels foggy, why his emotions spiral, why the smallest friction sparks a fire inside him. But it isn't the world's fault. It's the absence of rhythm, of self-mastery that weakens him. You, on the other hand, you prepared. You rise early, not to follow a trend, but because you understand that stillness is built before the world begins to shout. You read, not to look smart, but to sharpen your judgment. You train, not just for physical strength, but to cultivate mental clarity and command. You write, you reflect, you set your intentions with the precision of an archer drawing back his bow. Before the demands of the world arrive, you decide who you will be. Not after the noise floods in, but before it even begins. That's the secret. By the time the storm shows up, you're already prepared. Because in the stillness of the morning, you've already met yourself. Your thoughts have already been aligned. You're not scrambling to find discipline in the middle of chaos. You brought it with you. You didn't borrow it from a moment. You built it beforehand and carried it into the fire. Now, picture it clearly. One man rises at dawn. He sits in silence, collects himself. He reads something timeless, something that sharpens, centers, humbles. He maps out his day, moves his body with purpose, eats slowly, speaks little. Then he steps into the world, unrushed, focused, and firmly grounded. Now imagine another man. He hits snooze 3 times. He wakes up late and grabs his phone before he even takes a breath. Nobody act fast, no reflection, no direction. He rushes into traffic, into meetings, into conversations and decisions for which he is not ready. He's already behind before the day has even begun. Now ask yourself, when everything is falling apart, who do you trust? When tension is thick and leadership is needed, which of these men do you look to? The one who has practiced presence, or the one who is caught in a storm of reaction? This is the difference between a life that reacts and a life that leads. One is constantly chasing, always a step too late. The other is already in position, calm and prepared. And the truth is, calm doesn't arrive by accident. It's not something you stumble upon. It's built slowly, consistently, deliberately. One brick at a time, one habit at a time, 1 hour at a time. There are no shortcuts to calm. No app you can download. No podcast you can play that will magically install it into your soul. True calm isn't something you consume. It's something you construct layer by layer through steady repetition. It's built across countless quiet mornings. It's shaped through thousands of small, almost invisible decisions. Every time you choose what strengthens you over what simply soothes you, you lay another brick in the foundation. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to accept. If your outer world is constantly in turmoil, if everything around you feels like it's always on fire, then it's time to examine your inner framework. Look closely at your habits. Reflect on your mornings. Pay attention to your thoughts. Because more often than not, external chaos is just a mirror reflecting internal disarray. Calm men don't seek to control the world. They master themselves. So ask yourself with brutal honesty, have I been reacting to life or responding to it with clarity? Am I moving through my days with intention or just surviving on autopilot, driven by fatigue, fear, and frustration? Because calm isn't something you scramble to find in the heat of the moment. It's something you've built long before the moment arrives. If you want to embody unshakable calm in every room, no matter who you're facing, then build a life that makes it non-negotiable. A life that demands structure, that is rooted deeper than fleeting emotion. Rise early, not for appearance, but for alignment. Eat mindfully. Move your body with intention. Pause before reacting. Treat your schedule like a craftsman treats his workshop, with precision and respect. Sharpen your mind the way a warrior sharpens his blade. Not because a battle is guaranteed today, but because when it does come, you refuse to be unprepared. Live with such structure that chaos cannot catch you off guard. Let your foundation be so solid that when the world shakes, you remain grounded. Not because you think you're above the storm, but because your roots are anchored deep beneath it. And when others look at you, curious, maybe even in awe, wondering how you remain so calm, so focused, so steady under pressure, you'll know exactly why. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a quote you saved. It wasn't a 3-minute motivational clip. It was the quiet work you did behind closed doors. The habits you stuck to even when no one was watching, especially when it would have been easier not to. The mornings you rose while the world still slept. Those weren't just early starts. They were quiet victories. Every moment of discipline, every decision to push forward when no one else was watching, slowly shaped the strength others will one day see. This kind of life isn't lived occasionally when convenient or only when motivation strikes. It's lived consistently, day in and day out. No excuses, no dirás, because the storm isn't a matter of if, but when. And when it comes, it won't be the loudest man who leads. It'll be the one who spent years building himself in silence. Now look closer. Control your face. Before your lips say a word, your face has already spoken. It's the front door to your mind. In the first seconds of any interaction, your expression reveals volumes about what's happening beneath the surface. A flicker of tension around your eyes can signal anxiety, even if you thought you masked it. A clenched jaw exposes irritation you haven't voiced. Whether you realize it or not, the world is reading you, scanning your every micro-expression, every twitch, every shift, and forming impressions that are hard to undo. That's why mastering your expression is not vanity. It's leadership. Your face is the first message people receive from you. Before you explain your position, pitch your idea, or defend your decision, your expression has already shaped how you'll be received. And if you fail to control that silent message, you give up influence before the conversation even begins. Think about how people assess one another the moment they walk into a room, whether it's a boardroom, a dinner table, or a crowded event. Eyes quickly scan for subtle cues. Posture, eye contact, facial expression. Is this person confident or uncertain? Grounded or reactive? Within seconds, judgments are formed. And once made, those judgments take far longer to change, if they change at all. The untrained person doesn't even realize what they're giving away. Their face becomes a running commentary of every emotion. The doubt they feel, the anger they suppress, the fear they try to hide. And they wonder why others always seem to hold the advantage. Why they lose control in negotiations, in relationships, in leadership. The answer is simple. Their expression gave away their position before they had a chance to speak. But the individual who has learned to command their expression moves through the world from an entirely different posture. When faced with difficult news or pressure-filled moments, they don't flinch. Their breathing stays measured, their gaze steady and composed. Their lips don't tighten, and their jaw doesn't twitch. They appear calm, collected, almost untouched by the chaos around them. And to everyone watching, that calm becomes magnetic. This isn't about pretending or suppressing what you feel. It's not about being cold or emotionless. Instead, it's the highest form of self-leadership. You acknowledge your emotions fully, honestly, but you choose not to let them dominate your presence. You honor what you feel, but you govern what you show. Mastery of your expression doesn't mean you deny the human experience. It means you elevate it. You feel the full weight of stress, anger, fear, but you decide how, when, and if those emotions will appear on your face. That kind of discipline doesn't just shape perception, it commands respect. Because in the middle of crisis, when things begin to spiral, people look to those who appear unshaken. That quiet control signals strength, and others are drawn to it instinctively. This is how leadership is often transferred, without words, in the subtle moments where composure stands out. A calm face in the middle of a storm becomes the anchor. People lean on it. They associate it with confidence, with safety, with someone who knows what they're doing. So how do you build that composure? It starts with awareness. Throughout your day, pause and scan your face. Notice how your expression mirrors your emotions. Are your brows furrowed without realizing it? Has tension gathered around your mouth or eyes? Catch yourself in those reactive moments, whether it's a spark of irritation or the edge of frustration, and consciously relax your muscles. Practice neutrality. Stand before a mirror and rehearse what your face looks like in pressure-filled situations. Imagine receiving criticism. Imagine being challenged. Then watch your response. Your face must remain calm, even when your thoughts are racing. And pay close attention to your eyes. They are the most honest part of your expression. They reveal what words often hide. Train them to remain soft but alert. Focused, not darting. Calm, not cold. The goal isn't to harden your gaze, but to center it. Because a calm expression, especially through the eyes, speaks louder than words ever could. Your mouth should rest in a neutral, natural position, neither pursed in disapproval nor clenched with tension. That small detail might seem insignificant, but it speaks volumes. Over time, this quiet discipline begins to reshape how others see you. Colleagues start viewing you as someone who remains steady under pressure. Friends are more inclined to open up, trusting that you won't react with drama or judgment. Even authority figures, supervisors, mentors, coaches approach you with a new level of respect, sensing they no longer need to test your limits. Your face, once overlooked, becomes your most consistent and trustworthy tool. Not as a mask to hide your emotions, but as a filter, allowing you to choose when and how you reveal them. By mastering this silent language, you reclaim control of your narrative. You don't just show up, you arrive with presence. And that presence changes how people treat you. Don't fall into the trap of simply matching energy. Set the tone. Society teaches us to be mirrors. Someone raises their voice, you raise yours to match. Someone brings sarcasm or mockery, you return it with twice the sting. Someone pushes, you push back harder. At first, this reactive pattern can feel justified, even powerful. But in truth, it gives away your power. Every time you mimic another person's emotional state, you hand them the remote control to your behavior. What if you chose not to be their echo? Because true leadership, real influence, doesn't come from reacting. It comes from directing, from deciding, intentionally, the atmosphere you bring into any space. That means entering a conversation not as a sponge absorbing tension, but as a thermostat setting the tone. You don't wait for someone else's mood to define your response. You bring your own calm, your own clarity. So when conflict walks in the room, you don't rise to meet its chaos. You contain it. You ground the space. You stay centered while others unravel. And that composure, it becomes contagious. It's the difference between being a reflection and being a source. When panic begins to ripple through a room, threatening to infect every corner, you don't add to the noise. You become the steady center that grounds it all. This isn't passive resistance. It's active leadership. It's the ability to shape, not absorb, the emotional atmosphere around you. Think about the impact of that. One person anchoring calm can shift an entire room from frenzy to focus. Contrast this with a reactive individual. Someone who walks into every situation like a blank canvas, ready to be painted by the strongest emotion in the room. If they enter a space filled with anger, they become angry. If anxiety fills the air, they start to fidget. If the mood is defeatist, they slouch with resignation. And the danger? They think this is adaptability. They call it emotional intelligence. But in truth, they're not adapting, they're disappearing. Their identity dissolves under pressure, and they don't even realize it. Now compare that to someone who leads the energy in any environment. This person doesn't guess who they are from moment to moment. They know. Their emotional state isn't reactive. It's intentional. It's not up for grabs. They bring their own internal climate, calm, focused, firm, and they offer it to the room like a steady flame in the middle of a storm. Watch them during high-stakes moments. When others raise their voices, they speak more slowly. When tensions push people forward, they lean back. Their composed energy draws others in like gravity. It creates a current of stillness that breaks the momentum of chaos. And this isn't just in meetings or negotiations. It applies just as powerfully in personal relationships. Have you ever had someone approach you, their nerves on edge, their words frantic, hoping you'll catch their urgency like a virus? That's a test. In that moment, you can either mirror their frenzy, or you can offer them the quiet strength of your grounded presence. And when you choose calm, something unexpected happens. They start to slow down too. They breathe deeper. They find clarity through your steadiness. But this doesn't happen by accident. It requires awareness, constant practice. You must catch yourself in the moments when your mood begins to match someone else's, when their anxiety becomes your own. Catch yourself in that exact moment. When someone else's anger begins to stir your own, when their anxiety begins to seep into your chest like smoke. That's the moment to pause. Step back, take a breath, and most importantly, remember who you are when no one else is shaping you, when you're not reacting, but rooted. Because in those seconds, your self-awareness becomes your shield. This practice doesn't just transform isolated interactions. It reshapes how you lead, how you're seen, and how you're remembered. In moments of crisis, teams instinctively turn to the ones who remain centered. Families draw strength from those who don't waver. Organizations seek out those rare individuals who can bring calm into chaos, not because they speak the most, but because their energy is dependable, even when nothing else is. That consistency, it's more powerful than charisma. It's more influential than authority. Because when your emotional state isn't dictated by the storm around you, it becomes your greatest leadership tool. You stop living like a thermometer, reacting to every rise and fall in the environment. Instead, you become the thermostat, the one who sets the tone, who holds the temperature steady when others lose control. Presence, then, is not about making others bend to your will. It's about becoming so anchored in your own internal stillness that others are drawn to you for refuge. They trust the clarity you hold, even when they can't find their own. That's how you rise, not by force, but by gravity. When you master this truth, you step into your role as an architect of energy, not a casualty of chaos. And the secret lies in the pause. The man who learns to pause, even briefly, owns the moment. Because between every trigger in your response, there's a sliver of silence, so subtle, most miss it completely. But within that tiny gap lies immense power. That's where your character is formed. That's where thought overrides impulse. That's where the line is drawn between those who merely survive and those who lead. The untrained mind doesn't recognize this pause. It feels life as one continuous stream of reaction. No breaks, no space, no reflection. Someone cuts them off in traffic, and before they even realize it, they're honking the horn, yelling, reacting. A colleague makes a cutting remark, and without a second thought, they snap back. A family member presses an old wound, and they explode before they even register the emotion rising. This is how many live their entire lives, chained to their first impulse, reacting without awareness, prisoners of their own reflexes. But the rare individual who learns to recognize and claim the pause gains something others never touch: true inner power. Because within that one breath, within that brief, deliberate delay, is the key to self-mastery. In that single heartbeat of stillness, you step outside the trap of reactivity that governs so much of human behavior. You stop being swept away by emotion, and instead become the one who chooses. You become the author of your response, not the victim of your reaction. Think of what happens in that pause. Someone says something cruel, something designed to trigger a reaction. Your first instinct might be to sting them back with sharper words. But if you pause, even for a single breath, you open a door. The emotion that surged up so quickly begins to settle. The mind clears just enough for reason to speak. Suddenly, you're not trapped in the moment. You're guiding it. And in that guidance lies your strength. This pause isn't hesitation. It's not fear. It's not retreat. It's strategy. It's discipline. It's the result of inner strength, not its absence. Just like a master craftsman doesn't swing his tool wildly, but studies the stone, measures carefully, then strikes once with precision. You too learn to respond with care, not haste. Just like a seasoned general doesn't fall for every distraction or trap, but waits for the right moment, choosing his battles with clarity, not with heat. You too move with purpose, not with impulse. The wise man does not voice every fleeting thought, because he understands that restraint is a form of wisdom. That silence, chosen deliberately, can be louder than noise. He knows that in speaking less, he often says more. They choose their words with care, not to wound, but to build. The pause becomes the space where your higher self has room to breathe. Without it, you fall prey to your most basic instincts, the kind that chase instant satisfaction, snap judgments, and revenge masked as justice. But with that pause, something else awakens. Your patience, your ability to see long-term consequences, and your power to think clearly in the midst of chaos. You begin responding from a place of values, not from fleeting emotions. And that shift changes everything. In the middle of an argument, instead of throwing back the first sharp insult that comes to mind, you stop, breathe, and speak in a way that fosters clarity rather than conflict. You aim to connect, not conquer. When you're tempted, whether by comfort, distraction, or desire, you take that moment to ask yourself, what happens next? You don't rush. You reflect. You weigh the cost before acting. Even in moments gripped by fear, you don't run blindly or freeze in panic. Instead, you pause, and from that pause, courage rises. This simple act of pausing also becomes a shield against pressure from the outside. When someone tries to corner you with urgency, demanding an immediate decision, hoping to provoke haste, the pause grants you a moment to spot the manipulation. You gain clarity before committing. And when emotions surge and the crowd around you gets swept up in the storm, your pause keeps you grounded. You return to your priorities. You don't lose yourself in the noise. This isn't about being slow. It's about being intentional. The pause doesn't rob you of strength. It sharpens it. While others swing wildly, reacting without aim, you move with purpose. You don't waste energy, you direct it. You don't react, you respond. And through that, you begin to shape your life moment by moment. Because in mastering your responses, you begin designing your destiny. The strongest man in the room is not the loudest or the most aggressive. It's the one who can remain calm, even when disrespected. When someone treats you poorly, they reveal everything about themselves and absolutely nothing about you. And that truth, it's liberating, especially in a world that seems eager to provoke offense at every turn. Think about the very nature of respect. It's easy to be kind when you're being praised, recognized, or appreciated. Even a child can smile when handed a piece of candy. But what happens when the sweetness disappears? When you're met not with compliments, but with sarcasm, rejection, or outright hostility? That exact moment, when disrespect lands at your feet, is more than just an emotional sting. It's a turning point, a test that quietly defines your character. And what you do in that flash of time says more about who you are than any speech ever could. Most people, almost instinctively, go straight for retaliation. The urge feels natural, even righteous. Someone mocks you, so you strike back. Someone brushes off your thoughts, so you cut down theirs. Someone tries to make you feel small, and your first reaction is to show them just how sharp your edges can be. But pause and ask yourself, what's really happening when you do that? You're not just reacting, you're handing over your power. The moment you respond with the same disrespect, you've silently agreed that your behavior depends on theirs. You've said, without words, you get to control how I feel. You decide how I act. In doing so, you've passed them the remote to your emotional state. But you're not a device to be programmed by someone else. You're not a puppet pulled by strings of provocation. Your responses are yours, and they should remain that way. So when someone throws disrespect your way, take a breath and look beyond the surface. What you're seeing isn't really about you. It's a projection, a reflection of their own unresolved tension. It's a glimpse into their inner world, their insecurities, their fears, their unhealed pain. Because here's the truth. Emotionally secure people don't need to tear others down. Those who are genuinely at peace within themselves have no desire to disturb the peace of others. So the next time someone disrespects you, think of it not as a personal attack, but as a mirror. A mirror they're holding up, revealing far more about themselves than about you. But here's the deeper truth. That mirror doesn't reflect your shortcomings. It reflects theirs. Their attempts to belittle you only uncover their own sense of inferiority. Their sarcasm, a shield for their fear of being ridiculed. Their refusal to acknowledge your value, a window into their ongoing battle with their own self-worth. Picture this. You're walking through your neighborhood on a calm afternoon. Out of nowhere, a stranger brushes past you roughly, mutters something nasty under their breath, clearly hoping to provoke a scene. In that split second, you face a decision. You can take the bait, feed the fire, and show the world that someone else can pull you out of alignment. Or you can rise. You stop. You meet their eyes, not with rage, but with clarity. You offer no words, no flinch, no emotional transaction, and then you simply walk away. To some, silence might seem like weakness, but to anyone paying attention, it's unmistakable strength, because you've just demonstrated the rarest form of mastery, control over yourself. People watching don't remember the insult. They remember your poise. They don't admire the aggressor's noise. They admire your refusal to be disturbed by it. This isn't about being passive or letting disrespect slide. It's about protecting something far more valuable, your inner calm. It's about knowing your emotional energy is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it. Ask yourself, how many days have you lost to someone else's careless remark? How many hours have you wasted replaying an insult, perfecting a response in your head, or letting someone's negativity stain your mood? That energy, that time, that mental space, they belong to you. Why give them away so easily? Choosing not to react isn't weakness. It's power in its most disciplined form. When you free yourself from the compulsion to react, you step into a higher version of yourself. One who leads, not follows. One who responds, not reacts. And in doing so, you reclaim the time, the focus, and the strength that are rightfully yours. When you fully grasp that others' words and behaviors are more about them than about you, something powerful happens. You stop taking things personally. You stop giving away your peace. You become unshakable. You become free. Silence, in this context, isn't weakness, it's a refined strategy. In a world where noise is mistaken for intelligence, where volume is often equated with value, choosing silence becomes a radical act of wisdom. We've been taught to speak up, to never hold back, to assert ourselves at every turn. Expression has become synonymous with strength, while silence is seen as surrender. But has this belief served us well? Or has it led us into a culture of constant noise, where every conversation feels like a shouting match, where listening is rare and depth is lost? What if everything you believed about silence was never entirely true? Real power doesn't need to raise its voice. It doesn't seek approval, nor does it fear being misunderstood. True strength is often quiet, calm in the storm, patient in the chaos, measured in moments that demand reaction. It watches, it learns, and it chooses its response with care, not impulse. When you choose not to respond right away, it doesn't mean you're stepping back. It means you're stepping above. You're preserving your energy, not wasting it on things unworthy of your attention. Every moment you withhold a reactive word is a moment you reclaim for something more productive. Every confrontation you avoid gives you clarity to focus on what truly matters. Think about the dynamics of silence. It has its own gravity. When you pause, people fill that space with their own thoughts. They begin to reveal themselves. They speak more than they intended. They expose their insecurities without even realizing it. And all the while you, silent, composed, learn more by listening than you ever could by speaking. Your silence becomes a mirror. It reflects not your weakness, but their assumptions, their anxieties, their unspoken fears. And in doing so, it gives you insight, leverage, and most importantly, control. They reveal exactly who they are, what they fear, and what truly drives them, without you needing to say a single word. This discomfort with silence runs deep in human nature. We're conditioned to treat quiet moments as uncomfortable, as if silence itself demands to be filled. Psychologically, it creates tension, and when you refuse to relieve that tension with rushed replies, you open a vacuum, one that most people feel compelled to fill. So they begin to speak more than they intended. They explain, justify, and overshare simply because your silence unsettles them. It's a fascinating phenomenon. The less you speak, the more they reveal. Consider the most powerful conversations you've ever had. Were they impactful because someone spoke endlessly or because they chose their words with care, saying exactly what was needed, exactly when it mattered most? In truth, it's always the latter. Precision always outweighs volume. Words spoken with intention carry weight. When your speech is measured and deliberate, people listen more closely. They lean in. They don't want to miss a single word. Silence, then, becomes your amplifier. Imagine you're in a heated discussion. Tensions rise. Everyone expects you to jump in, to fight back with forceful counterarguments, to let emotion take over. But instead, you pause. You sit back. You observe. You read the room. You pay attention to who's truly speaking from substance and who's masking their insecurity with volume. And then, in the peak of the storm, when the noise has hit its crescendo, you speak. One clear, deliberate sentence. One truth spoken with calm precision. And it cuts through the chaos like a blade through still water. The room falls silent. Not because you raised your voice, but because you waited, you watched, and you chose the perfect moment to respond. Your restraint gave your words a depth and authority that sheer volume never could. Think back to your recent conflicts. How many of them spiraled out of control because you spoke too quickly? How often did you leave a conversation wishing you had taken a breath, chosen your words with more intention, and allowed wisdom to lead instead of impulse? The truth is, most arguments aren't won by the person who speaks first or the loudest. They're won by the one who speaks with clarity, insight, and control. It's the person who speaks with wisdom that ultimately shapes the outcome. When you learn to harness the power of strategic silence, you become unreadable. You become someone others can't easily analyze or manipulate. People can no longer decode your mindset just by watching your face or listening to your first reply. Because you don't react, you respond. And that response is calculated, not impulsive. Responses are thoughtful. They're rooted in clarity and strength. This doesn't mean staying silent forever or avoiding confrontation. It means recognizing that your voice is a finely tuned instrument, not something to be played recklessly. Sometimes the most commanding thing you can do is nothing at all. Sometimes the highest position of strength is the one that stands without needing explanation, justification, or defense. When you commit to this discipline, you realize that silence is never empty. It's full of energy, full of readiness, full of potential. It holds power. Think of it like the quiet just before a storm breaks, the pause before lightning strikes, the breath before the blade is drawn. In that stillness lies the power to change everything with just one perfectly timed sentence. Your critics will wear themselves out trying to provoke a reaction. Your enemies will grow restless, wasting their energy guessing your next move. But you remain composed. You hold your ground. You wait. And when you finally choose to speak, it's not just noise, it's impact. Because mastery isn't about always having something to say. It's about knowing exactly when to say it, and when silence says it best. It's about understanding which moments truly deserve your voice. Not every situation requires your input, and not every provocation merits your energy. You don't owe the world a reaction. What you owe to yourself and to your purpose is a response. In those fleeting milliseconds between stimulus and your next move lies a powerful choice. And that choice separates mastery from mediocrity, wisdom from weakness, intention from impulse. It's the moment where you either guide your life or let someone else steer it for you. This seemingly invisible pause, so quick it often goes unnoticed, is the very space where your real power lives. It's where your agency, your clarity, and your self-control reside. Grasping the difference between reacting and responding isn't just helpful. It's vital if you want to reclaim full authority over your existence. A reaction is your nervous system on autopilot. It's the primal, ancient part of your brain, the fight or flight response, designed to protect you from danger. But here's the catch. In today's world, that same mechanism misfires in everyday interactions. It flares up in response to criticism, disrespect, or high-pressure situations that aren't truly life-threatening. And when you react impulsively, you're not choosing, you're defaulting. You're allowing emotional urgency to bypass your reason, handing over control to fleeting instincts. A response, on the other hand, is awareness in motion. It's when you consciously pause, take a breath, and then act from a place of grounded wisdom. It's when you recognize that you do, in fact, have choices, and you exercise them with intention. Responding is not passive, it's powerful. It's activating the uniquely human ability to step between what happens and how you choose to deal with it. Society, however, has conditioned you to believe otherwise. You've been programmed to think that strength means acting fast, that hesitation is weakness, that the loudest voice or the quickest retort wins. You've been trained to defend on command, retaliate without thought, and justify without reflection. But what if all that conditioning is the real trap? Because when your responses are predictable, anyone who learns your patterns can manipulate them. All it takes is pressing the right emotional button, and you're dancing to their rhythm, not your own. Think about how often this pattern shows up in your everyday life. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and without hesitation, your hand hits the horn, your mind fills with curses, or you flash an angry gesture. A coworker criticizes your work, and you instantly shift into defense mode, explaining, justifying, defending. Someone challenges your opinion, and before you've even processed the question, you're already arguing back. In each of these moments, your ability to choose how you want to respond has slipped away. You've surrendered your power, handed over control to the situation, or worse, to the person trying to provoke you. You've allowed yourself to become a puppet, reacting on command to someone else's stimulus. But you're not a machine wired for automatic responses. You are a conscious, self-aware human being with the incredible ability to choose your next move at any given time. No external event can force you into a specific reaction unless you give it that power. And that truth, it's one of the most liberating insights you can ever realize. Your reactions are not obligations, they are options. Regardless of how someone treats you, your response is yours and yours alone. Of course, this principle will be tested frequently. People will poke, prod and push. They'll search for your weak spots, those trigger points that make you lash out. They'll want to provoke a reaction that benefits them more than it benefits you. Because when you react without thinking, you validate their influence over you. You confirm their ability to manipulate your emotional state. And if you give in, you've handed them exactly what they were after, proof that they can control you. But when you resist that bait and choose to respond with intention instead, you completely shift the dynamic. You remove their leverage. You break the pattern. You're no longer playing by their rules. You're writing your own. They're now forced to engage with someone who's steady, self-possessed, and impossible to provoke on cue. Imagine this scenario. Someone publicly accuses you of something false, something that strikes at the heart of your character and reputation. Your immediate urge might be to respond in fury, to fight back with facts and fiery emotion. But what if instead you paused? But what if, instead of reacting with anger or urgency, you simply smiled? What if you took a breath, held your gaze steady, and calmly asked a clarifying question like, "Help me understand what led you to that conclusion." In that one small choice, you've shifted the entire emotional landscape. You're no longer playing defense. You're taking the lead through curiosity rather than conflict. Rather than meeting provocation with fire, you've offered clarity and composure. And strangely enough, this kind of calm often disarms an aggressor more effectively than any sharp rebuttal ever could. There's a quiet power in not reacting, because in that pause, you demonstrate that your emotions are not easily hijacked. You're not rattled. You're grounded. And think about it. Most of the regrets people carry with them don't come from the things they didn't say. They come from what was said too hastily. Words spoken in anger that cut too deep. Replies that came from pride rather than patience. Retorts fueled by pain instead of understanding. These moments teach us a valuable lesson about the cost of choosing reaction over reflection. So how do you begin to build this strength? Start small. When someone says something irritating, don't respond right away. Let the words settle. Give yourself 10 minutes, even if just in your mind. In meetings, pause for 3 seconds before answering a challenging question. During an argument, take a breath before leaping into defense. These micro pauses may seem insignificant, but they're powerful. They carve out space for your conscious mind to step forward and lead. They create a gap wide enough for wisdom to enter. The goal here isn't to become slow or passive. It's to become intentional. It's about owning that critical window between stimulus and response and using it wisely. Because in that pause lies your true strength. Not in the speed of your reaction, but in the power of your restraint. True strength lives not in impulse, but in the deliberate choice you make when the world expects you to lose control. This is where your true power begins. Right in that space where your conditioned reactions fade and your authentic self finally steps forward. It's not found in force or volume, but in quiet authority. Emotional control isn't just a virtue. It's your badge of leadership. Because real leadership has never been about titles, corner offices, or the ability to bark orders louder than everyone else. It's about how you govern yourself when everything around you begins to spiral. Think about it. People don't instinctively follow the loudest voice in a room. They're drawn to those who stay composed when others break. They seek out those who remain grounded when the floor beneath everyone else is shaking. That's no coincidence. The link between emotional mastery and leadership is not a suggestion. It's a foundation. If you can't control your own emotions, how can anyone trust you to guide theirs? How could you possibly lead a team through uncertain times if you're constantly thrown off course by your own emotional storms? How do you offer stability to others if you can't even hold steady within yourself? True leadership starts in your mind, long before it's ever visible to others. It begins in those quiet, difficult moments when you choose composure instead of chaos, when you anchor yourself in principle rather than drowning in panic. It starts with the discipline to pause when everyone else is rushing, to take a breath when others are gasping for control, to think clearly when those around you are simply reacting out of fear or habit. This internal self-mastery, this deep sovereignty over your emotional terrain, becomes the solid ground from which all real leadership rises. Your energy, whether calm or chaotic, enters every space before you even speak. It shapes every interaction, every meeting, every relationship. Before a single word escapes your mouth, People are already sensing your presence. They're scanning your emotional signal. If you walk in carrying tension, frustration, or simmering anger, it speaks louder than anything you'll say. When you walk into a room carrying anxiety, people sense it instantly. Their bodies tense. Their expressions harden. They brace for confrontation, even if no words have been spoken yet. But when you enter a space with a calm, grounded presence, something shifts. You change the atmosphere without uttering a single sentence. People relax. Their defenses come down. They start to feel at ease, more receptive, more willing to listen, more open to your influence. Why? Because they feel safe in the emotional space you create. Think about the most admired leaders throughout history. Not the ones who ruled through intimidation or fear, but the ones who inspired trust and loyalty. What set them apart wasn't just charisma or eloquence. It was something deeper, something quieter, an unwavering composure. When the world turned upside down, they didn't flinch. When the pressure mounted, they didn't crumble. They held their emotional ground while others lost theirs. That kind of composure isn't about shutting off your feelings or pretending to be unaffected. It's not stoicism for show. It's about facing your emotions head on and choosing to respond with intention. It means allowing yourself to fully feel the weight of difficult moments without letting that weight cloud your judgment or break your clarity. Imagine a crisis at work, in your home, or within your community. Voices are rising. Uncertainty spreads like wildfire. People begin to panic, scanning the room for leadership, for someone to provide direction. In that kind of moment, it's not always the most senior person who takes the reins. It's not necessarily the loudest voice that gains attention. Instead, it's the one who remains steady while everyone else unravels. It's the individual who doesn't need to shout to command respect, because their calm presence invites quiet. Others instinctively lean in. This person doesn't rush to action out of fear. They pause. They assess. Then, with clarity and focus, they take deliberate steps forward, setting the tone that others naturally follow. They don't rush to point fingers or cast blame. They don't waste energy criticizing others or escalating the tension. Instead, they anchor themselves in the present moment and focus entirely on solutions. Their composure acts like a ripple on still water, subtle but powerful, spreading calm throughout a group that is desperate for stability. This form of leadership doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't thrive on theatrics or demand applause through passionate speeches. Rather, it quietly asserts itself as a steady presence amid surrounding instability. It's the calm voice in a room full of shouting, the clear eyes when panic fills the air. The person who commands respect, not through drama, but through quiet consistency. They don't need to seek approval from others, because they've already found grounding within themselves. This kind of emotional control doesn't appear overnight. It begins with small, consistent choices. It starts when you speak more slowly during frustration, when you sit upright, even as anxiety tightens your chest, when you draw a deeper breath instead of letting anger control your next move. These are not grand acts, but daily disciplines. Moments where you catch yourself drifting toward emotional reaction and choose instead a more deliberate response. You begin teaching your body to reflect the steadiness you want your mind to hold. Each conversation, each stress trigger, each time someone pushes your boundaries becomes an opportunity to reinforce your emotional strength. It's like weight training for your mindset. And the more you practice, the more your composure becomes your default. Not just an effort, but your identity. The goal isn't to shut down your emotions. It's to rise above emotional chaos with intelligence. To become aware of what you're feeling while staying in control of how you express and direct those feelings. That is the heart of emotional intelligence. And when you reach this level of emotional sovereignty, something profound begins to shift. People begin to see you in a new light. They turn to you in difficult situations, not because you always have the perfect solution, but because you remain steady when the world around you begins to spin. They trust your presence, not your title, not your resume, but your ability to stay composed when others unravel. In those moments, your centeredness becomes your true authority. Real leadership isn't earned in times of ease. It's forged in moments of pressure, when everyone else is crumbling and you remain intact. That's when people begin to respect not just what you say, but who you are. And while the world might celebrate victories on visible battlefields, your most critical battles happen in silence, within the private arena of your own mind. Inside that mental battlefield, the real war isn't against others, but against the inner voices that seek to derail you. The whispers that interpret every delay as failure, every criticism as a personal attack, and every quiet moment as a sign that you're not enough. This inner monologue doesn't shout, it persuades. It tells you you're under threat when you're not. It convinces you to react when staying still would serve you better. It pretends to protect you, spinning tales of honor and pride. It tells you that if you don't speak up, you'll be seen as weak. That if you don't retaliate, you'll lose respect. That if you show grace, you're giving away power. But the truth? This voice isn't your guardian, it's your saboteur. It's the hidden architect behind many of your conflicts, the one who pushes you into fights that don't need to be fought. It speaks the language of urgency, of ego, of fear disguised as strength. You can't let them get away with that. What will people think if you stay silent? These are not calls to integrity. They are distractions. They pull you into stories that exhaust your energy without serving your deeper purpose. That voice inside your head tries to convince you that your value hinges on winning every argument, correcting every misunderstanding, and defending every perceived slight. It confuses loudness with power, emotional reaction with true strength, and confrontation with bravery. But recognizing this voice for what it is, that's the first critical step toward reclaiming your mental freedom. The second step? Realizing that you don't have to obey it. Just because a thought arises doesn't mean it deserves your belief. Just because an emotion surges doesn't mean it demands action. You are not at the mercy of every impulse that crosses your mind. You can witness these mental intrusions like clouds passing through the sky, acknowledging them without letting them darken your horizon. Think of your mind as a garden, and you as its sole gardener. Each day, you are planting something through the thoughts you dwell on, the internal narratives you repeat, and the emotional patterns you reinforce. If you consistently water seeds of resentment, they grow into thick, thorny underbrush that crowds out clarity and light. And when insecurity is left unchecked, it spreads like invasive weeds, tangling your confidence and suffocating your potential. But when you intentionally choose to plant seeds of peace, purpose, and resilience, your inner world begins to change. You begin cultivating a mental environment that supports your growth instead of sabotaging it. Of course, this transformation doesn't happen by accident. It demands deliberate care, steady attention, and a commitment to self-awareness. Because just like a neglected garden becomes overrun, a neglected mind can easily be consumed by chaos. Your mind, much like an untended garden, doesn't automatically filter out destructive thoughts. Just as weeds thrive in neglected soil, toxic thoughts will take root if you're not intentionally managing what grows in your mental space. It's not enough to simply hope for clarity. You must actively choose which thoughts deserve your energy and which ones must be pulled up before they dig in too deeply. Imagine this scenario. Someone spreads false rumors about you, deliberately distorting your character in ways that cut deeply and unfairly. Instantly, your mind floods with anger, indignation, and an overwhelming urge to fight back. Thoughts of injustice, of defending your name, of correcting the lie with force. All of it feels justified. In that moment, it seems like silence equals defeat. But here's where true discipline begins. Pause and ask yourself, will this still matter 5 years from now? Will responding to this provocation serve your long-term purpose, or simply entangle you in a battle that drains your energy and distracts from your vision? When you shift your perspective, stepping back from the heat of the moment to look through the eyes of your future self, the answer often becomes startlingly clear. So many conflicts that once felt massive end up becoming footnotes in the story of your life. They fade with time, but the emotional cost of engaging them can linger far longer. Every ounce of energy spent arguing, defending, or retaliating is energy diverted from building something meaningful, something lasting. The people you admire for their poise, the ones who walk through chaos with grace, didn't get there by accident. They weren't born with unshakable calm, nor were they handed perfect circumstances. They developed it. Through consistent practice, they learned to guard the entrance to their minds. Every thought had a pass inspection. Is this helpful? Is it necessary? Is it worth the energy? And that's when the transformation begins. When you stop giving every negative thought a seat at your table. When you refuse to feed what weakens you, something powerful happens. You reclaim energy you never knew you were wasting. You discover strength not in fighting every battle, but in choosing which ones are even worth noticing. When you stop fighting mental battles that lead nowhere, something liberating happens. You suddenly have the bandwidth to focus on what genuinely matters. Your energy, once scattered across 100 petty conflicts, becomes concentrated, purposeful. The path to this kind of mental clarity doesn't begin with a dramatic overhaul. It starts with one small act, pausing before you react to your own thoughts. When that familiar internal voice nudges you toward conflict or tells you to prepare defense, take a breath. Ask yourself, does this thought move me closer to my highest self? Does it serve my peace or just my pride? More often than not, the answer will be no. This practice may sound simple, but it is powerful. Your mind can either be your fiercest ally or your most cunning saboteur. The difference lies in your daily choices. Each thought is an opportunity to choose awareness over autopilot. You won't win every external battle, but you can win the most important one, the battle within. That's the truth so many people overlook. Being right and proving you're right are two entirely different pursuits. One serves the ego, constantly hungry for validation. The other serves your peace, quietly content without applause. One drains you with relentless justification. The other liberates you by needing no defense. That doesn't mean the urge for understanding disappears. On the contrary, the need to be seen, heard, and understood is deeply human. When someone distorts your words, questions your value, or challenges your character, it's natural to want to speak up, to correct the misunderstanding, to demand recognition, to make your truth undeniable. But hard-won wisdom reveals something else. Not everyone is looking for clarity. Some people aren't interested in truth or resolution. Their goal isn't to understand. It's to unbalance you. They argue not to connect, but to create confusion. Have you ever sensed that, mid-conversation, you're not dealing with a desire to solve anything, but an attempt to provoke? They're not seeking truth. They're seeking emotional ammunition. They feed on reactions, hoping to catch you off guard, to make you flinch, to pull you into their carefully staged arena of trivial confrontation. Their satisfaction doesn't come from winning a meaningful debate, but from watching you lose your calm. It's not the topic that matters to them. It's the turmoil they can create. Once you see this pattern for what it is, you're presented with a pivotal choice. Do you step into their game and surrender your composure? Or do you step aside, choosing not to play at all? Walking away from a provocation like this isn't an act of weakness. It's wisdom in motion. It's knowing that your emotional bandwidth is limited, your focus is valuable, and your peace of mind is not up for grabs. Choosing not to engage isn't defeat, it's strategic preservation. Not every insult deserves your correction. Not every misjudgment needs your rebuttal. And not every baseless opinion requires your time or energy to counter it. But that runs contrary to what many of us have been taught. Our culture often glorifies the fighter, the loudest voice in the room, the one who never backs down. We're told that strength means always speaking up, always proving ourselves, and never walking away from challenge. But that definition blurs the line between force and power. It confuses noise for influence and reaction for control. The truth is, strength often wears the face of restraint. Real power isn't about overpowering others. Sometimes, it's about holding your ground without ever lifting your voice. Imagine yourself sitting in a meeting. Someone takes a shot at your work, an unfair jab, maybe even a veiled personal attack. Your reflex is to jump in, to set the record straight, to make sure no one walks away with the wrong impression. But what if instead you calmly said, "Thank you for sharing your perspective," met their gaze with composed confidence, and then smoothly redirected the conversation toward a topic that actually matters? The true impact doesn't come from defeating someone in a verbal exchange. It comes from your refusal to even step into that ring. And that's what makes all the difference. It signals a deeper, more evolved kind of strength. But to get there, you must redefine what victory actually means. Most people think winning an argument is about having the last word, making the other person look foolish, or persuading the crowd to take their side. But let's be honest, are those really wins? Those moments might feel satisfying in the short term, but they often come at the cost of your inner peace and long-term credibility. Real victory is quiet. It's calm. It's the ability to stay composed while everyone else is losing their cool. It's choosing to stay aligned with your bigger mission instead of getting pulled into small, ego-driven battles. This kind of success is achieved when you protect your peace like it's gold, something rare and invaluable. You stop spending your precious mental bandwidth on people who don't see its worth. Instead of rehearsing arguments in your head or crafting clever comebacks for imaginary debates, you invest that same energy in growth, in purpose, in building a life that speaks for itself. Because in the end, does it matter who said what? But does it matter who you're becoming? When you master the discipline to walk away from battles that don't serve you, you start to win the war within. And when you conquer that internal need to prove yourself, the noise outside loses all its power. You no longer rely on others to validate your point of view. Your sense of calm becomes unshakable, not because you've silenced the world, but because you've silenced your need to react to it. True strength doesn't lie in always standing your ground. It lies in knowing which ground is even worth standing on. The most powerful people aren't the ones who fight every fight. They're the ones who know when to disengage and walk away with their dignity intact. So, if you're tired of letting difficult people rattle you, if you're ready to take control of your inner world, start by mastering the art of emotional clarity. Choose your responses carefully. Stay grounded, no matter who's trying to throw you off balance. Because when you truly own your calm, you lead with strength, silence, and unshakable certainty in every room you enter. Wishing you peace, strength, and clarity always. Stay healthy, stay happy, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mindset Daily.